Hi everybody, welcome to a video on spraying some cycle forks. They were a friend's fork that he had in the garage or his shed for quite a while, and he said to me, he wanted to use them when he was making a retro bike. He wanted to use them, but he didn't want them in that colour. Could I spray them black? So I thought, yeah, okay, no problem. So I'll just take you through the spraying of them from start to finish. Really, the video goes on for about 14 minutes, so if you're finding it or going to find it boring, then if you flick to the end you can see some photos that I've taken just to show you how they come out. So what we're doing at the moment is we're just really lightly, if you look at the bottom right hand corner on the piece of brown paper there, you can see how much is actually coming out the gun. I just did a little test spray there just so that I knew that not a lot was coming out, and we'll just keep adding and adding to the forks, and gradually we'll change colour. The idea is that you get a wet enough application for it to stick, but that it dries pretty quickly. And the reason for that is that they're older forks. They had lacquer on them. Some of the lacquer had come away, but none of the paint had come away. So there's no need to re-prime them or anything like that. So I just went over the bits of lacquer that had deteriorated with some 400 grit and then some 600 grit, and then thought that should be fine to apply. When you look at it at the end, you can see that any marks or any lines that are on there have gone and disappeared. So it's worked really well. So let's take you through these stages. The reason for doing these small little strokes with hardly any material going out is because it's got old paint and old lacquer on it, and I don't know what old paint and old lacquer it is. And even if it's compatible with what you're using, this is a solvent base coat, even if it's compatible with what you're using, you do run the risk of getting little fry-ups, little reactions, little paint reactions. So be very careful of not putting too much material on at once, especially at the start, because what will happen is that because there's enough material on there, it will, in the time that it takes to dry, it will react with the existing coats of paint or lacquer or sometimes stickers or whatever's underneath. It will react with them, and if it reacts with them, then you get a little fry up, and you might get one or two or three, and then you're back to square one. So it's not the end of the world. You just leave it to dry, rub them out, prime that little bit if necessary, rub it down again, and then just slowly coat over it, like we're doing now with small increasements. But you might as well do that in the first place, and then it saves, or most of the time it saves the little fry-ups and little paint reactions. So we're changing this from green to, it's actually a BMW black. So it's got a slight metallic to it, which when it's lacquered looks really nice. So I thought I'd do them in that colour because I quite like that colour for a black anyway. So as I say, we're doing really small increasements, just slowly building up the paint layer, slowly changing the colour, but not getting your reaction, which seems to work really well. And as I say, if you look at the photos at the end, you can see it has worked well. So the gun I'm using is an ANI R150, which is a really popular gun. Some of the videos I've made, people like to ask lots of questions about that. So one of my personal favourites, that and the SRI Pro Light. I've got it in 0.8 tip for doing this because you really don't want loads of material coming out. You can do it in any tip size, but you just waste more material. Because I always find that if you put, like, say you've got a 1.2 tip and you put that, you bring the fan down quite small, so it would be as small as this, the 0.8. Even if you back the fluid off, it doesn't tend to give such a good finish. It's not as controllable and I think that's just because it's a bigger nozzle and it's, you know, it's putting out a bit more material. So I like to use the small guns for the small objects, because you just don't need any bigger gun. And there'll be people who say, oh, you can use any gun to do anything, which you can, but it's not as much fun, and it's not as intricate as with a smaller gun for smaller items. I don't think so anyway. Now I've got, you get a 250 milliliter pot with the ANI R150, and what you'll see on it now is the 100 millimeter pot, which I use for small things. You know, this I think this took about 80 millilitres of paint altogether for the base coat, and that's two full coats, and then the little pigeon coats that you could see me doing in the first place. So it's had, basically it changed the colour, and it was giving it a grounding so that it didn't react. And then two, as you can see now, the gun's putting out more material than before, so it's just laying it on thicker just to get ready for the lacquer. So I find a smaller pot ideal for something like this, because the pot it doesn't get in the way of anything, and a lot of the stuff I do is small. So I do use the 100 milliliter pot a reasonable amount. The 250 milliliter pot is a good pot. Having said that, the newer one has a better way of tightening at the top. It's like a copy of the LPH 80 cup, but it's taller, and it's not as good. So I prefer the original ANI R150 pot with the 250 milliliter pot, because it's a little bit wider, but it's not as high, and it just doesn't seem to get in the way for a lot of things I do. So you can see there I'm just checking, because in theory there's enough on there, but I've got a little bit more in the gun, and I think I'm thinking to myself, I'm narrating this afterwards, so I think I'm thinking to myself, I might as well do another coat, because the paint's there basically. So you could stop at this point, but I thought, well, I might as well put another coat on, because I've got it there. Going back to the gun again, I've got the 500 milliliter pot as well, which is good if you're doing like a lot of the same stuff, more like a conventional gun. But I don't use it a lot, because I just don't have the need for that much paint in one go normally, because most of my stuff is the smaller stuff. So we're just putting on a final base layer, which, as I say, you probably wouldn't need in the real world, but I'm just doing it because the paint's there. It's going to take me another 10 minutes to do it and to let it dry. So you know, it's not a problem. The temperature is about 23 degrees, so it's reasonably warm. That's 23 degrees Celsius, which is, what is that? It's about 74, is it? 73, 74 in Fahrenheit for you guys in the States. So it's not hot, but it's probably reasonably ideal temperatures for spraying, you know, paint and lacquers and things like that. So I tend to, you can put it on a little bit thicker than you would normally, especially the little pigeon coats, the really small coats at first. As I say, it's really important not to go over the top with those. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I've only got a spray can or whatever, the principles are exactly the same for using a spray can as they are for using a spray gun. You don't get so much, this is the first lot of clear coat going on now, you don't get so much control, but you can do the small pigeon coats. I just thought, I just made it up. I don't think it was really word as a pigeon coat, but you know what I mean, small light coats. You can do those with a spray can just as well. You just have to move the can quicker, because you don't have so much control over the trigger and the fluid outlet. So the first coat of clear is going on now, and you'll see that it's relatively matte in colour. In texture. It's not matte. It's just that, again, I'm putting it on really lightly so it actually makes it look a bit dulled off. And if I was after a more matte finish, apart from using a matter lacquer, if that makes sense, a less shiny lacquer, you could put it on similarly. So you would effectively be building up a base of lacquer, but you're not letting it run out. And by run out, I mean you're not letting each droplet run into the other. So obviously, to get a gloss finish, normally you spray it on as thick as possible without it running. Now with forks at a reasonable temperature, which is, as I say, 23 degrees Celsius is a reasonable temperature, with forks you don't have to worry so much about the running, simply because you're moving them around all the time. So if it's a fixed panel, then obviously you can't necessarily move it unless you've got it in a proper panel clamp and it's off the vehicle or whatever. Then you can move it more flatter, so you stand less chance of it running. So I've increased the fluid delivery. I always do a little test patch just to see how much fluid's coming out, whether it's more or less what you want. So I've increased the fluid delivery now, and you'll see it starts to take a shinier coat, which is what we're after. But what I was trying to say before is, if you're after a more matte finish and you haven't got any matte lacquer, then you can put it on. Just hold the gun a bit further away and put it on effectively as dry as possible while maintaining its ability to stick. So it's not so dry that it's not adhering properly, but it's dry enough to make it look more matte, basically. So it's like an overspray, if that makes sense, rather than a flowing coat. So when you'll be spraying it on now, you're spraying it on thick enough that each droplet will flow into the other, so it gives you a flat, or as flat as possible anyway, gloss finish. And that's the whole idea about it. So it's had one light coat, and now we're having the a further full coat. And I think you'll find, I can't quite remember, I'm narrating this a couple of days afterwards, but I think I put another flow coat, another full coat on in a minute. That flows out nicely, simply because it's there and it's in the gun, and yeah, it finishes them off nicely. So it's quite difficult. I know I sort of like ramble on a bit, but it's quite difficult to think of what to say. It's actually ideal at the time because it's all going through your head as you're doing it, but you can't sort of have a mask on and spray, etc., and talk that well. You know, it just doesn't work, especially if you've got like a full face mask. You can't, you just can't do it properly at all. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions or whatever, then give us a shout. Yeah, and I hope you've learnt something. As I say, the pictures are at the end, so you can see the finish. But it's come out really well, and I think he'll be pleased with them. And after a week or two, that clear coat will be nice and hard, and will absorb some of the chips he gets on the trails. So it's nearly time to go now. Nearly towards the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Just to say thank you to the subscribers. There's been quite a few subscribers come on board, which is good to see. It gives you more encouragement, or gives me more encouragement to make some more videos, because you don't know how people react to them sometimes. And the spraying videos, I've hardly done any of those because they just don't get many viewing figures. Maybe because I'm crap at spraying, maybe, but but they don't get many viewing figures. People like to see the comparisons, really. But anyway, you'll see the photos here, so hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you again. Cheers. Bye bye.